Hey guys, Squatch Reloading here, and in this next part of our 9mm load series we're going to be working on setting the bell in the cartridge, which will work in conjunction with our seating die, and then we're also going to set our powder charge. And we're going to take this information for our powder charge right out of the Hornady load book. So that's where we're going to get our recipe from. So in the first video we talked about we're going to use the 124 grain Hornady XTP. So that's a jacketed bullet, so we're going to need to be aware of that as well when we're setting up our bell prior to our powder charge. So with that being said, we're going to get this fail-safe ride disconnected for the moment, and we're going to work on that bell. So to get our bell set correctly, I'm going to take one of the locator buttons out of the press. Reason being, that way I can slide a cartridge in and out. And I'm using some previously sized cases to get the diameter set, and then I'm using one of the projectiles here that I'm going to use, that we're going to be working with through this series. So that is one of the Hornady 124 grain XTP hollow points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cartridge in station number 2, and then I'm going to raise my ram up, and then I am going just to kind of, I can feel that the flaring tool is inside the cartridge just ever so slightly. So I'm just going to, by hand, snug that as much as I can. And then we're going to back the ram out. I'm going to go ahead and loosen these up a little bit just to make sure here. So I know that I've entered the cartridge slightly, so I'm going to try and test fit a case. And I hope you can, I'm going to see if I can get this where you can see it. But I can't get it to set in yet, so we know we're going to have to make an adjustment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go maybe a quarter of a turn, and then we're going to try again here. And then I'm going to try to set the projectile in there. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking for it to enter into the cartridge ever so slightly. So we're not quite there. I'm going to go another quarter turn, raise the ram, and I'm not feeling a lot of resistance. So yeah, we're not close yet. So we're going to go ahead and just go another quarter to a half. You know, this is just something that you'll have to get right by trial and error. So I'm getting very close. It's wanting to go in there, but not quite yet. So we're going to go ahead and raise it. Try another one here. I reused that other one a few times. Okay, yep, we still need some adjustment, quite a bit. So I'm just going to make a big move. Basically a half a turn on the die, roughly, and we're going to see if we can get some more expansion. And I am using the same case over and over, but so once I get it close, I'll get a fresh case and just to confirm our adjustment. Now that's entirely how I do it. I'm not saying it's the way you have to do it, but it's what I do and it works. Okay, so to me, if I can get this in where you guys can see it, it's just barely going in. So for me, I think that's pretty close. And what I'll probably do is just go just a little bit, maybe an eighth of a turn. And I'm going to grab a fresh case just to, my phone's going off. I got probably someone calling, looking for guns or something. Oh no, it's my my mother. Hey Mom, we'll get back to you later. Okay. Yep, that's kind of what I'm looking for right here. Just going right to the top of the cartridge, and the case will stand on its own. And when using a progressive, that's kind of what you want. You don't want the case you know, not seating at the top and falling over, or, you know, you can spill powder and things like that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take one more case, and I'm going to raise it up into the die and the flare tool, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my lock ring. Just snug. Okay, and then we're going to check one more time, just like working with wood. Measure twice, cut once. So, yep, that's still fitting great. So we're going to go with that. And all right, so now let's get our fail-safe rod put back in. And remember, in the previous videos, I said this can go in one of two ways. So what's important is as you're standing towards the front of the press, that this hook, like so, is going in from left to right, and you want to go through both the slotted hole and then the round hole, and we're going to let it hang. So now we're going to raise the ram up enough where we can rotate our powder measure, get it into the slotted hole on the bracket coming off the shell plate, and then we're going to bring it down, and our stop sleeve is going to catch and it's going to seat into position. So now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the fail-safe rod so that it's perpendicular, perpendicular to the base of the press and then parallel with the front leg of the press here. Now, it doesn't have to be exact, but you know, I try to get it as close as I can by eyeballing it, and I think we're pretty close. Hopefully the camera picks up on that. And now we're going to take our 5/32 Allen key, and we're going to snug up the two clamp bolts at the top of the powder measure, or at the base of the powder measure. And what this is doing is this is locking the powder measure down to the powder die, so it will not rotate once we get these snugged up. So now that we're snugged up, and the whole time again I was keeping tension on the fail-safe rod, and now we're going to adjust the preload with the wing nut. And in the previous video I said we need to get this about a business card width. So I've done this enough. I can kind of eyeball a business card, but for you guys that aren't sure, grab a business card. So we are set. We have our powder measure fixed. We have our fail-safe rod adjusted, and now we're ready to add the powder and get adjusting charge weights. Okay guys, like at the beginning of this load series, the powder we're using is unique. It's kind of a flaky looking powder. It's not near as fine as Tight Group, but we're going to remove our cap there, and unique is kind of a backup powder for me. I typically, with my competition guns and stuff, I really like Tight Group, but this reminds me a lot of Blue Dot, which is one of my favorite 10mm powders. So we're going to just fill it up generally over halfway. That way it's, you know, most representative of when we're loading. And we're going to give this some taps here, and what we're doing now is we are unifying the powder, and that's important. We want to get the powder just situated evenly, and we don't have to go crazy, just tap on a little bit. And on this press we're running the powder sensor from Dillon, and it's basically a tattletale. It's on a rod, and as you deplete your powder, it's going to say, hey, I need some powder. But we're just going to put that in place, and then I usually just give it a couple taps just to make sure everything's good. So now we're going to uniform the slide bar assembly and the charge weight inside the powder measure, and we're going to start making adjustments from there. Okay guys, so here's how I adjust my powder measure. So one thing that we need to consider with this style of a slide bar powder measure is we are going to be lucky to get plus or minus a tenth. And I know there's some guys that will argue that, but in my experience, I've never seen it any better than that. So we're not going to fool around chasing a tenth of the grain, making adjustments on this powder measure. The way I do it is I will take a spent cartridge, and I will use that, and I'll make a throw. But the first thing that we would do, of course, is once we got powder in, we're going to run 5 charges, dump them back in the powder measure to make sure that we have everything uniform inside the body of the powder measure. And then I'm going to throw a charge, and I'm going to throw it on the Dillon determinator and see where we're at. We're going to be somewhere in the 4s, I'm guessing, because the last load session I did was, I think, 4.5, somewhere in there. We're going to be shooting for 4.7 based off the load information that I showed you. So we're going to see where our baseline charge is, and then we're going to adjust up or down if we need to. We'll run 5 charges in the pan. We'll take an average of those 5 and see what our average charge weight is. And then we'll verify a charge on the on my RCBS beam scale, just to double check our scale, double check our powder measure, and then see where we're at from there. So here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to run 5 charges, and I am doing my charge just like I'd be running the press. Full stroke down, set a primer. Okay, so that was 3, 4, and then one more here. All right, so we're gonna take this charge, I'm gonna throw it on the Dillon determinator so you can see it. Okay guys, a quick note about the anytime you're using a digital scale, I am in the habit of letting them warm up. I recently picked up a IntelliDropper. You guys have probably seen my video on that, and you know, it says to let the unit warm up, so I've been in the habit of just letting things warm up. So this scale's been on probably 25-30 minutes. So we're going to take the charge that we just dropped over there on the 550 and see what our base charge is. Okay, so we're at 4.4 grains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run another charge. So in theory we should be somewhere around 8.8, 8.7, 8.8. So we're seeing a little bit of fluctuation. So we know that we're in the ballpark of 4.4, 4.5. So now we're going to make an adjustment, and I'll show you how that works on the powder measure. So guys, at the base of our, or the back of our powder measure, we have an adjustment knob. So we would turn the knob clockwise to increase the charge and counterclockwise to decrease the charge. So right now we're at 4.4, so we don't need to move a whole lot. So I'm just going to turn the dial about 1/4 of a turn, and then we'll throw 5 charges to clear everything out and set our powder measure, and then we'll see where it measures on our base charge. Okay, so we're going to run 5 more charges after we made our adjustment. And opinions vary on this as well. Some people say, well, you only got to do it 3 times, you got to do it 10 times, you got to do it 20 times, or whatever, but I do 5. So again, I'm not claiming that this is the way. I'm just saying this is what I've done and it works, and I lost count there. I think that was 3 and 4, maybe that was 5. We'll do one more just for good measure. Alright, so I'm going to spin the camera around so you can see the scale. I'm just trying to bob and weave through everything here. Get up a little closer. Alright, so let's see. The camera's coming there. Okay, we'll see how this charge comes out on the scale. Okay. So we're at 4.6 and we're shooting for 4.7, so I might just give it a skosh more turn clockwise to see if I can get it to 4.7. Honestly, if I would hit 4.8, I would be happy. The max charge on that load data, let me pull it up here. I have it on my phone. Is 5. So we're a step down from the max charge, so we're shooting for 4.7. So if I hit 4.8, I would be perfectly happy with that, because I figure plus or minus 1 grain. That would keep me at my 4.7 up to 4.9, so underneath the max charge, so we should be pretty good. So let's make an adjustment and try it again here. Alright, so I went ahead and made the quick adjustment there clockwise on our powder adjustment knob. I have ran our 5 charges through to clear out our powder measure to get everything uniform. So now let's drop another charge and see where we end up. Oops, and I even dropped a little granule there. We're at 4.7. So I think we're going to call that a baseline. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run 4 more charges, and then we're going to take an average of that. So there is 2. Three. 4. And 5. So now we're going to grab our calculator here, and we will see what our average charge weight is. So that's 23.6 divided by 5 is 4.72. So that's our average charge weight. So I think we have the powder measure set pretty good. Now let's verify it on the beam scale. Okay, so on our beam scale, we want to make sure that we get it zeroed. The large poise needs to be on 0, and then the small poise on 0. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set this beam scale up to 4.7. So that's going to be an adjustment on the small poise. So we're going to take our weight, and these are in 1/10 increments. So this middle line here is 5. So we want to go 2 more notches. It's kind of hard to hold the camera into this, so that would be 1, 2 notches, so that would be 7. So now we're going to dump our charge and see if we've got 4.7 or not. Okay, just ran a charge off the press here, so we're going to pour it into the scale cup, and we should get a 0 there, and it looks very good. So we're definitely hitting 4.7, and that's what we're shooting for. I'm going to drop a link to a live stream that 76 Highboy did on beam scales, and it really opened my eyes up to the beam scale and how accurate they can be. And I've got some work to do to get myself leveled up, but any of you new reloaders out there, you should definitely check that out because there's some great information there. So I'm going to drop a link below. Okay guys, well there you have it. That's how I set up my powder measure on my Dillon 550. So one thing I want to kind of reiterate a couple times is when it comes to flaring the case or putting the bell on prior to seating the projectile, less is sometimes more. Keep in mind, the bigger your flare, the more you're work hardening the case. So you're going to diminish your case life that way. Also, as you get a large flare, you'll feel that kind of skive up against your seating die, depending on what die set you have, and then you'll feel it grind up against your crimp die. So be mindful of that. Again, your jacketed bullets really don't need a whole lot of flare. You just want that projectile to start in the case mouth and sit there, and you're good to go. Now, when you're running high-tech coated lead cast bullets or just plain lead projectiles, you'll want a bigger flare. That way you're not skiving off lead or you're not peeling up coating or and plating. So those are things to consider. For the beginner reloader, you know, there is a lot of different methods on adjusting your powder measure. Again, on this powder measure, my opinion is it's a plus or minus 1/10 capable powder measure. just based off my usage, I have 2 of these powder measures, or actually 3 of these powder measures, and I haven't seen any difference between the 3. So don't go chasing that 1/10 of a grain. Do a 5 charge group, take an average, and then always bang it back up against your RCBS scale or any beam scale that you have to make sure that that average charge weight is what you want. And you've seen from our results today, our average weight was 4.72 grains. And we were shooting for 4.7 based off our load data. And that brings me to another point. You guys that are just starting out, or maybe you're watching this because you want to get into reloading, start off with published load data. In this series, we're using Hornady XTP. I am taking the load data from Hornady's load information. So their load information is based off their projectiles, and you really can't go wrong. You're not going to get yourself into a lot of trouble trying to guesstimate or take averages of different published data and things like that. That's generally going to be pretty safe. And again, you know, your safety is your method, your process. I'm showing you how I do things and how I've been successful. So take that for what it is. If it works out for you, great. But again, these are just my methods. And I really wanted to cover that when we got into putting the powder in and stuff like that. But on the next video, we're going to set the seating depth of our projectile into our cartridge. We're going to set the crimp, and then we're pretty much to the point where we're going to load some primers up and start running these rounds through the Dillon 550C here. So as always, don't forget to check us out over on Facebook, on our Facebook group, Ohio Reloading Connection. We have a Squatch Reloading page there on Facebook. Subscribe to that as well. All these videos are on Utah Gun Exchange and Gunstreamer, as well as here on YouTube. So until next time, guys, God bless.